Commissioner Flores,
Present.
Commissioner Naquette,
Present.
Commissioner Young,
Here.
and Commissioner Devane and Barry are absent.
Okay, have we taken a look at, I know I have, does anybody else take a look at the minutes for the last meeting? Does anybody
Yes.
have any questions, comments, additions, corrections? Chair will entertain a motion.
Motion to approve the minutes as presented.
Do we have a
I'll
second?
second that.
I'll
John
second.
seconds that.
Okay, those in favor of passing the minutes, aye, raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye, John does.
Okay, minutes are passed. Fred, you seem to have mentioned that we're going to modify the meeting a little bit. What do you feel is best to start with?
Carrie is joining us and she has to leave early. So let's talk about just roles of everybody during enforcement actions first. That would be great. And then we can go into the public hearing following that.
Okay,
Hi. Okay, so that means I'm on. Just a couple starter questions. Did everybody receive a memorandum that went out from me not very long ago,
Yeah.
earlier today?
Is that separate from the packet that we usually get from the city?
Karen, I'm going to defer to you.
Like I got the
Yeah.
agenda and all the notes and the minutes, and that's what I got.
I got nothing from you.
Karen, you're muted.
I'm sorry, Carrie, the last email I saw was a draft. I did not realize it was to go out to the commissioners. I will do that right now.
The PDF?
Mm-hmm.
There's a PDF version.
Yes.
Okay. I wish I had asked that as we were waiting for for a quorum to join. I'm sorry, I just assumed everybody had a copy. Yeah, so Karen, if you can, I guess, save it separately or anything, instead of just forwarding my email, but
Yeah, I can do that.
okay. All right, so let's just know that that's coming. And it will be, it's okay that you don't have it right now. I will jump in. It'll be a resource moving forward. So that's usually what my written materials are. And then the second question was, how much time do we have? I mean, is this a 5-minute presentation? Is this 20 minutes? Fred, what are you anticipating?
Are we limited at the end of this hour like we were the previous meetings?
We are. Karen, we need to be out of here at 5:45 latest.
So try to keep it to 5 minutes, but if you go over, I understand.
Okay, all right. Well, we do have other contributors, so my section, I'll just try to keep it very brief. And so let me just jump in. With that said, let's not waste any more time. So there has been, I guess, some, I don't know if it would describe it as tension, but certainly questions around the Historic Preservation Commission and your allocated code duties and obligations, and what the commission might want to do in terms of maintaining and preserving historic structures throughout the independence. And so I was asked to just present you with the written materials and then to go over with them with you a little bit. And one of the reasons that we're doing this is for your own it's so the commission can function more smoothly, but also individually, that you can feel confident that you understand your role as an individual citizen, and then as a member of this body that only can act in concert. So what any commission in the city, first of all, you're formed by code, and your code is that forms the Historic Preservation Commission is actually set out in the Independence Municipal Code 260, and C and D, subsection C and D of 260 outline the duties created by the municipal code. And those include duties set forth in the development code. So we're going to talk about that next. And then additional tasks are survey and inventory of historic resources, participate in or delegate programs. I'm summarizing here, programs to other groups for information and education pertaining to historic preservation. And then you can also perform functions that are designated or delegated by either the council or the city manager. So you operate within that construct, either the development code or this municipal code, those provisions, that's what you get to do. You're intended to help preserve historic preservation, obviously within Independence, and you can educate people on the importance of that, or delegate to other groups certain information and educational training purposes. So turning to subchapter 59 of the Independence Development Code, which is IDC, I just refer to it as IDC. You, as you know, you serve essentially as the planning commission in the city's development code for structures, historic preservation structures and areas. And so you sort of step into those shoes. You are a review body. So when applications are filed, you get to review them and ensure that the criteria that's set forth in the code, and boy, did we work long and hard to establish good, clear criteria. You make sure that the applications coming in and the structures subject to those applications meet your code criteria. And there's a bunch of different ways you do this. You get to at least act as the initial review body for changing the local historic register. For designation, you determine whether or not a property should be designated a historic structure. And I'm just using fast terms. I'm not even paraphrasing your code. You get to re-rate or remove items that are on the historic register. You get to review and approve new construction. All of these are application-driven reviews. Moving on, there's alterations and additions to structures, at least with regard to serious ones. Some of those staff reviews, but others the HPC reviews. Demolition or relocation of a resource, that's an application-driven review. And you even have purview over historic trees. So that is everything that you do get to do as a body. And for the most part, that is all sitting as a body and having staff bring applications to you. The enforcement piece, the enforcement teeth of the IDC 59 is delegated not to you, but it is delegated to staff. And so enforcement is either under the development code itself, which is delegated to the city manager or the manager's designee, or in some cases, it's delegated to the building official. And so again, in both of those instances, it is staff that needs to be reviewing issues around town and deciding whether or not an enforcement action needs to be brought. And I think this is an awesome opportunity for Sue to jump in, or Sergeant Headland, to let you know what it is that triggers enforcement actions for them, because there's a number of considerations, not simply a street observation of something that may or may not be violating your code. I'll turn it over to them.
Correct. So in this particular, and to do with that historic preservation violation, I was approached by the historic preservation officer, which is Fred Evander, and he notified me that there were violations occurring, and that's how my involvement began.
So Sue, is that what initiates all of your enforcement activities or investigations?
A good majority are complaint driven. Yes. I just
complaint driven from citizens or?
Yes. Anybody.
Okay. Fred, do you have anything you want to chime in on that?
Hey, no, I mean, it's how I go out and look at stuff is largely the same way as we hear about it from folks, either inside the city or from residents.
Sergeant Headland or any other enforcement arm of the city, do you want to pipe up, talk about the process?
Sure. Well, I'll just jump in here because I think you're getting bits and pieces that want to kind of give it kind of more depth, because we try to handle everything in the city the same way, and our goal is always to ensure compliance and to get compliance, from whomever, and that is, something that we deal with on all sorts of municipal code items and development code items, whether they be historic or whether they be related to many other things. So the process is pretty much the same everywhere. We get a complaint and it goes to usually some staff member who has knowledge of that particular area. In this particular case, that's Fred, because he certainly has the staff knowledge to interpret the code at least the best that he can, given the circumstances, and make sure that we're applying those code provisions, fairly and equitably in the goal of getting compliance. And so, that will be lots of different things, could, go in many different directions, depending on the nature of what's going on. And typically, we would turn it over to the CSO or community services officers if we got to the point where we recognize that there might be potential violations that would require some sort of action, whether it be, issuing them a formal stop work order, or that might end up in becoming a situation where it might end up before the municipal judge, because we need to make sure that we're applying the code equally and effectively and fairly, as well as a million other things to make sure that whatever we end up doing is not only legal, but it also is going to stand up as we move forward in the process. So that's where our CSOs have that particular expertise to make sure that we're following proper processes and standards to make sure that if we ever do end up before the municipal judge, that we have the best case that we can possibly move forward. So it ends up being a fair number of people, who end up doing it. And, it's hard to say where any particular instance is going to go, because quite frankly, they're all different and they're going to be dealing with different sections of code. It could be the municipal code, it could be the development code. It could be lots of different things. And I think there's a lot of thought that needs to go into making sure that we're doing things in a proper and effective manner.
I see that the chair is speaking and you're muted.
Thank you. I muted myself when I printed off your memo. I think that our actions so far pretty much demonstrate we understand what you've put forth so far, hence our motion to recommend to council to direct staff. We know that staff is who makes the decisions on enforcement. We're very clear on that. We know our lane there. As far as enforcement of our portion of the code versus other, it's a little different than other code enforcement actions, because when we're looking at a destruction of a historic resource or parts of a historic resource, it's something that you have to move quickly on. And that has created some tension that after the first move, after the first stop work order, work shouldn't have continued until we had an application before us, and we were quite happy to wait for it. But the tension arose when more work started.
So I'm here to talk about just generalized application of the code, and but I think the goal of this conversation is to help support trust in your roles, and then trust in that staff is implementing code and undertaking enforcement.
There's some trust issues, I agree.
So I guess let's talk a little bit then about what is available to you. because what I've talked about so far, none of it is initiated by the HPC. It is all application driven, as we were talking about. And
Complaint driven.
pardon me?
Complaint driven.
The enforcement is complaint driven, correct, but HPC actions are application driven. So there's a distinction there. Since the enforcement arm is staff and the HPC arm is I guess I would say it's prospective.
I see your point. I think that you're missing that we can still make recommendations to council if we see a problem with historic preservation going on in the city. And our trust issues come from, we have yet to have one single positive result when there's been an unapproved alteration, ever.
Ooh. So, okay, well, let's talk about where I don't want to see you go, and talk also about the council's limitations. So in order for the HPC to take any action, you both need the legal authority. So it's everything that I just outlined, and you also need a quorum and direction from a majority of a quorum or a majority of those present. So I hate taking specific examples that are currently a problem, because that just tends to get everybody very defensive. But were an individual on the HPC to write a letter to the council in their HPC capacity, it would need to be something that is within your purview on the HPC, and it would have needed to be delegated to that individual by a majority of a quorum. And I'm using some legal buzzwords because I realize we're in a hurry here. Just to back up a bit for anybody who's perplexed what a quorum is just at least 4 of you. So what we were waiting for when this meeting was convening. And you have a 7-member commission. 4 constitutes a quorum. 3 of those would be required to vote in favor of delegating some authority that the HPC actually holds to one of you. A better example than a letter to the council would be delegating to one of you the authority to form, participate in, promote, conduct, or delegate programs for information and education. So you want it to fall within one of those, the existing delegated authority. And like I was saying, enforcement is already delegated to staff. And I think the far more important point there is that the council has already delegated away almost all of its authority over staff. It has, by charter, a city manager, a city recorder, a municipal judge. That is who the council holds some level of authority over. And so Tom is really he wields all of the staff power. Everybody answers to Tom. Let's just be clear. And so asking the council to take action to direct staff is asking the council to get outside of its lane, because I would tell the council, and Tom will tell the council, I'm sure, hey, council, you don't have the authority to tell Sue, Fred, anybody, anything. And most of everything that you could tell Tom is pretty limited in terms of how they want to direct him to direct his staff. And they can hold a performance review, they can do a performance evaluation. But I caution councils daily, please don't overstep your authority in the realm of personnel. And the reason I do that, it's the final subject on this material that was just passed out to you, is there is liability to the city if the council, for instance, acts outside its purview, and there's liability to individuals. So you as members of the HPC, if you're acting within your scope of authority, you will be defended and indemnified in the event there's a claim brought against you for, say, unlawful employment practices. The city will defend you. If, however, you're acting in your Historic Preservation Commission member capacity and doing something that wasn't delegated to you by the commission, you're on your own. And insurance is going to back away and say, nope, that was outside their scope. It was not delegated. So I caution counselors regularly, not to overstep their bounds.
Jennifer has a question, yeah.
So then, and this is just for clarity for me, like I'm fine with everything that you said, but because we're all also residents of Independence, if somebody was to write a letter and just signed it, resident of Independence, not Historic Preservation Committee member, then that would be okay, right?
That's the way to do it if you're going to do it. Yeah. And they're in small towns. So it kind of, how to say this succinctly, you will always want to be very clear. I'm writing in my capacity as a citizen. I'm not acting in my capacity as a Historic Preservation Commission member. Absolutely not. I'm concerned about X, Y, or Z. And you would submit that pursuant to the proper chain of command. So I don't know if it would go to the council. I don't know if it would go to Tom. I don't know if it would go to Fred as the Historic Preservation Officer. Tom, you might want to chat about that a little to say how, if that was going to happen, how would you want it to happen? But before you do, I just want to caution everybody, even if you say I'm acting in my individual capacity, sometimes that doesn't work. And sometimes the city can still be held liable, or you individually can be held liable. And that happens when for elected or appointed officials, if it's a small town and anybody who sees you, like Tom or the police chief, they kind of can't walk around town and say, now I'm off, they might be off duty, but I am no longer the police chief. I'm doing this in my individual capacity. It will be imputed to them that, nah, we always call you chief. We always will see you in that light. Fire chiefs have the same problem. I don't know if that applies to, your commission members, but I just want to caution you that sometimes it's hard to shed that persona, even if you try to in a small community. Hard to be anonymous, in other words. So Tom, if you—
Yeah, I guess I would just say, I think you've kind of covered, what the HPC has authority over and what they don't, related to the items on the table. I guess I would say if it's an enforcement issue, then it probably should be coming to me. I mean, it's clearly delegated to me. If there's concerns about enforcement, for whatever reason, then I guess going directly to council wouldn't make a whole lot of sense since they delegated that authority already anyway. So, I think that, certainly there was a memo that was put out to council that addressed a couple things. And one was kind of what you've talked about related to directing council or passing a motion to ask council to direct staff. I think you've covered that. But there was also a lot in there that, I didn't actually hear from the HPC when they met last time related to, some criticisms of staff and the way that we're doing enforcement. And so I think that, I'm curious as to, first off, why that went to council, as Carrie's mentioned, that would make more sense to come to me. And also, was that really a HPC action, or was that the action of an individual? Because in reviewing the minutes, or reviewing the tape of it, certainly there was the motion to talk to council about the issue regarding the fines. But as far as the enforcement concerns and questions, I didn't hear that conversation clearly from the commission. And so what I might suggest is, Carrie's kind of gone through this, and I think we should wrap this up. But maybe what we should do is put this hearing piece that we have on so that we can kind of get that out of the way, because I know that was really what the goal of the meeting was. And then maybe towards the end of this meeting, wrap back and have a broader conversation about what are these direct concerns from the entire Historic Preservation Commission that's leading to this, level of untrust. Because I'll be quite frank with you, I've watched what happened in this particular instance, and I think staff did a bang-up job. So there's clearly a disconnect here, and I want to know what that is. So
sorry, you watched from the beginning. The rest was garbled on my end. I'm sorry. Tom?
He thinks staff did a bang up job. He liked the
Oh, okay. I couldn't hear, it was garbled.
Yeah, but
Just
there's
so
supposed to be this-
everybody's not in the dark here, because there's this conversation that I think only three of us are kind of having. I wrote a memo after the last meeting stating that motion that we passed. And then I said, as chair, I felt I needed to add some context, and I can't remember what the exact words, context around the whole decision. And I summarized kind of feelings I've heard from the whole HPC since I've been on it about enforcement actions. And I think I'm glad that Carrie came here, because that's good information she passed on about what the city council can do and what they can't do. And in the future, probably going to Tom would be the best thing. But I think that the issue they're getting at is they think I might have gone a little bit outside my lane.
Well, I think
It's just fair enough.
Yeah,
I'm not
I mean,
saying-
I think what Carrie's point is you guys need to act as a body and make sure that you guys are acting as a body when you are, or you're acting as a citizen, or you're just being clear as to how that's moving forward. And I think, like I said, I think it would be best to kind of, Carrie can finish up here, and then we can get this piece out based on 555 Monmouth Street. And then we can wrap back maybe at the end and kind of talk more about kind of what that is, because this memo is going to council next Tuesday, and in the way that it was written. And I assume that the other commission members had a chance to see that. If they haven't, we certainly should forward that to them.
They have not.
It was actually put together. I think that will be helpful to kind of inform where that conversation goes.
Right.
When
They
you
have,
say
they have not seen it,
not seen your letter, Chair?
the memo. That's correct.
Right. Okay. That's helpful, which is why I like to speak in generalities. This is.
That's fine.
Yeah.
And here's the thing is the memo is kind of moot. It's a moot point kind of at this point, since we've got an application in front of us. I don't even see the need for it to continue. I even expressed that to Fred before I submitted the memo, that if you had a application in hand, it would be a moot point.
Well, then I think it would be up to you guys to decide, because there was definitely a motion made by the entire HPC at the last meeting, which was included in that memo. So if you guys feel that's been satisfied and you want to not have that memo go to council, that would be fine. But otherwise, the memo will go to council next week.
Okay, so does anybody else feel it's a moot point with an application in front of us? Jennifer, you're muted. You're muted. There you go.
I know. I am just so overwhelmed with information that I'm like, oh my God, what exactly was it that we sent to them? Exactly.
I sent them a memo basically stating what we passed as far as a recommendation. And then I built some commentary around it, which I said the commentary was coming from me as the chair, not from the whole commission, but it may not have been clear is what I'm hearing.
But you as the chair means that you are chairing us as a committee. So I think that's kind of where the problem came in.
I get it. I've written other letters that weren't, how should I say, of an adversarial nature, and I never heard any issues come up about that before when I did something like that. I think that it may have stepped on people's toes, and they're trying to protect us from possible liability in the future with other actions. Is that kind of where we're coming from?
I sure am. I definitely want to protect.
That's why I'm thinking, if it's a moot point at this point, since we have application in front of us, I'm certainly willing to withdraw it if everybody else feels the same way.
Sure, because the action states if an application or plan to the Historic Preservation Committee is not submitted. So it has been submitted, so the action does not need to move forward.
Exactly.
Right. So I can hear a motion regarding that memo.
Motion to not send his memo to city council.
Second.
I'll second that.
Okay, those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Tom, the memo's been withdrawn.
I still, at the end of the meeting, if we have time, would still like to wrap back on these.
I agree.
questions.
Let's get on with the actual application.
Okay, my closing points are, just know there's a lot that goes into enforcement that's behind the scenes, but it's evaluating whether or not it will be successful, whether or not it will subject the city to liability. That's the first piece. So it might look easy and just assess fines, but it isn't. And second is, please just continue to work in concert, just like you did, passing motions. Do not talk about any of this outside of meetings. Make sure you have a quorum. A majority of a quorum is approving whatever actions are taken by the HPC, and that those actions that you take are those that are delegated to you by code. I'm done.
Thank you for your time, Carrie.
Absolutely. All right. Good talking to y'all. I'm going to sign off, Tom. Is that right?
Unless the commission has other questions for you. Yeah, thanks for your 5 minutes.
Any questions?
No.
Okay.
And just so you know, if you got this memo very late, and so if you do have questions that come up or want more clarification, I'm sure Carrie would be happy to carve some time out at a future meeting to kind of go through it in more detail once you're there.
I do apologize for that. I had a draft last night and I had meetings all day. So it's not your staff's fault. It is definitely my fault that I got it to you when I could get it to you between meetings. Thanks for your patience and for your listening.
Thank you.
Okay, enjoy your meeting. Bye.
The chair, let's see here. I'm opening the public hearing. So the public hearing before the Independence Historic Preservation Commission is now open for application CA-2021-04, a request for exterior alterations to a single-family home located at 555 Monmouth Street. Do any commissioners need to disclose any conflicts of interest, bias, ex parte contacts, or site visits? I will disclose that on the day of both the first stop work order and the second stop work order, I did stop by and briefly speak to people working on the property. I don't know who they were. And I pretty much detailed these conversations to Fred when I had them. Okay, no other disclosures. Oregon land use law requires several items to be read into the record at the beginning of each and every public hearing.
All right, that's me. The applicable substantive criteria upon which the case will be decided are found in the Independence Development Code, Chapter 59, Historic Preservation. These criteria are addressed in the staff report and will be read and summarized by staff during the presentation of the staff report. All testimony, arguments, and evidence presented must be directed toward these criteria or other criteria in the Independence Comprehensive Plan or Independence Municipal Code, which the speaker believes to apply to the decision. The failure of anyone to raise an issue accompanied by statements or evidence in support to afford this commission and the parties an opportunity to respond to the issue will preclude appeal to the City Council and the Oregon Land Use Board of Appeals, LUBA, based on that issue, ORS 197.7635C. An issue which may be the basis for an appeal to the Land Use Board of Appeals shall be raised not later than the close of the record at or following the final evidentiary hearing on the proposal before the city. Such issues shall be raised and accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford the community and the parties an adequate opportunity to respond to each issue. ORS 197.7631. The failure of the applicant to raise constitutional or other issues relating to proposed conditions of approval with sufficient specificity to allow the city to respond to the issue precludes an action for damages in circuit court. ORS 197.796(3)B.
We will now hear the staff report.
Perfect. So, as you all know, oh, Jason, can you allow me to share my screen?
Give it another try, Chet.
Was it? Oh, perfect. All right. Can you folks see my screen?
Yes.
You can see some pictures of the building. Perfect. Now here's the, we have received an application from Luis Rodriguez to put the project, the building as that previously unpermitted work was completed on, essentially back to its original state or its previous state. And I shouldn't say it's original, because it's quite clear when we look at the building that a number of changes have occurred to this structure over time. This is a picture that sort of shows the condition prior to the work that was completed on the building. You'll note, I'll just call this out, a couple of air conditioners, a horizontal slider, all of that sort of stuff. All of those things are and were originally noted in the 1989 designation for the project. This is an eligible contributing building. According to the historic district, the designation document, it says that it's one of the oldest structures on Monmouth Street. It was built in 1885. And at the time of that original designation document, it said that these windows were different. It said there was a transom window up here. It said a whole bunch of other things. Also, I'll just call out some of the other changes that have occurred to this structure over time, and we'll see these gradually as we go through it. You'll see that this siding right here in the gable was not original to the house. This is T111 siding. The original siding was this shiplap. It went all the way up. My guess is probably what happened is they wanted an air conditioner up here. They took the original window opening, put that air conditioner in, put in a smaller window right there. Also, this portion of the building is not original to the building. This is a later addition, and you can tell that based on things like this board and batten siding right here, as well as the T111 on this side. Also, this window is a horizontal slider, which is not typically a historic window. Also, all of the windows of this structure had been changed in the past. You'll see this was a real estate picture of the property, same sort of conditions that you'll note. Now, going through the property, the chair asked me to detail changes that had been made to the structure as a result of the unpermitted work. Now, these are some of the changes. This trim piece right here was removed. You can see it in this picture right here. You can also tell it was removed because the paint is gone. There is a sample of what that trim piece looks like back here that remains. Also, the T111 siding on the side of the building was also removed. That, from my perspective, is actually a positive change for the building. And it would be great if the applicant could maintain that look. Also, you'll note that the air conditioner was removed. As part of this application, they hoped to put back the building as it was, and in doing that, they suggested just putting that T111 siding back where it was. The trim was removed around the windows. The corner board was removed right here. Trim was removed right here, and it was replaced by a different type of trim. And then in this portion of the building, which you can see here, the more historic shiplap siding here was covered. So sort of based on all of those changes, my conclusion from this is it's impossible given given the amount of changes that have occurred to the building to just put it back without a decline in the historic character of the structure. You'll see there's numerous things that have been changed, and it's just going to be nearly impossible to, I mean, it's going to be very difficult, if not impossible, to actually restore those things. So based on that, what I would recommend is that that this application cannot be approved at this point, but I do think that it could be approved if the applicant were to suggest some mitigation measures. Essentially, the way I've been thinking about it is sort of like wetland mitigation. You impact something, you restore for something, and it seems to me that that is the instance here, where it is still possible to get a net positive benefit to the structure, even given the changes that have occurred to the building. Now, having said all of that, I mean, I'll just go back to this side elevation. You can see the original window opening that was on this building right here. I mean, by removing the T111, you can actually see where the original window was at. If they were perhaps to reclaim a window like that in that area, that, from my perspective, would be a net positive benefit compared to this. It would also allow them to maintain the historic shiplap siding, which would be, again, a benefit compared to what it was. Now, sort of going to the west elevation. Oh, no, that's not right. Let's go to the front of the building first. Also, in looking at this, and I mean, I've looked at this building a number of times at this point. I've looked at these pictures a number of times. You'll note some of the historic, the window detailing that existed on the home when it was sold. And I'll just call out something that I think is really interesting. Look at this header, right? That header right there doesn't quite line up with the trim pieces around the window. Now, but check it out, the door does. So what I actually think happened was when they replaced these windows here, they took this header design and they, rather than replacing a thin piece of trim, they put in the window and they put a thick piece of trim to replace the side trim. So I think ultimately what was original was this front door trim, right? And I think that whoever put in this window decided, you know what, I don't want to work to cut down a trim piece or look around to find a trim piece. Instead, I want to put, this is probably 2 inches right here. Instead, they put like 3.5 inch trim, and they didn't even bother to sort of line it up with the top. Based on that, my gut is that this was the original trim, and then this was later added. You'll note that's interesting because then they ended up using sort of the similar trim design on all of the other windows on the home. They had the header actually tie into this on all the other windows, but I tend to think that it was a smaller trim originally. Having said all of that, even the trim on the front of the building, except for this piece, this piece, this piece, and this piece, was not original to the structure. This is sort of the character of the home right now. You can see the trim has been removed. The little sills have been removed as well. You can see the roof trim board had been removed, the corner boards had been removed, all of that stuff. Going on to the west portion of the building, you'll note that this is not a new window, but it's sort of the same thing where it doesn't fit the historic window dimension, but it did reveal the historic window dimension. Also, you'll note as part of the work that they originally completed, they removed this window and added a new window in this location. And I'll just note that the trim details don't match either the sort of more historic portion or they're just sort of new trim details. This work right here, what I would recommend is absolutely that this window should go back right here. I will note that this window, and again, this is, I've told the applicant that there probably should be some degree of mitigation that occurs to this structure. And I gave sort of a range of options of what I thought might be appropriate. If the commission elects to allow this window to remain, I'll just point out that there is, let's see if I can see it. There is, on this front elevation, and you can't see it in that picture, a historic transom window, and it's called out in, you can actually see the line right there. So there was a historic transom above the door. It actually calls it out in the designation document. And so it might make sense if this window is allowed to stay, to say, essentially, you have to reinstall a transom window above the door, similar to what is called out in the designation document. Yeah, it says, yeah. All right, so based on all of that, and then this is some of the work that's occurred on the back. Again, this back portion is not a historic portion of the building. You can see again the horizontal sliders right here. This was all T111 siding, and this is what originally started their work. This T111 siding apparently was starting to leak, and so they came in here, and then they just ended up going around the building. You can see this is what it originally looked like. This little porch right here has been removed, but and then the T111 has been covered. This is the state of what the building looks like right now. So I guess based on all of this stuff, let's see if I can stop sharing my screen. Based on all of this stuff, my recommendation is that that the Historic Preservation Commission not approve this application at this point, but seek what the applicant proposes to help mitigate some of these impacts that have occurred to the building. And so based on that, that's my recommendation. I think it might be worth hearing from Luis about if they have any ideas.
We're running really close to our deadline in 6 minutes.
No, it's not the end of the hour. I said 5:45.
Oh, I apologize. I misunderstood you. Okay. Good. So let's see here. Do any of the members of the commission wish to ask the staff any questions about his report?
Not at this point. I think it's a good idea to hear from Luis now.
Right. Okay, so I guess we can hear from the applicant, Mr. Rodriguez. We can't hear you. We can't hear you, Mr. Rodriguez.
as he's doing that work. I will just call out that I did note that a more historically appropriate door would be a positive enhancement to the building as well. Currently, there is a storm door on the building, and it's a very new looking door. So
One thing I want to mention that I don't, you probably meant to say it, but on the staff report on that small horizontal window, to take it out, you'd actually have to destroy more of the historic resource to get it back to the pre-work, because you can't have the seams line up. So you'd have to start pulling more of the siding off. So
yeah,
it's a matter of fixing it would also damage it.
Yep.
Okay. Can you guys hear me?
We can. Go
Okay.
ahead, Mr. Rodriguez.
Yeah. So yeah, this has kind of been a project for us. To be completely honest, we had an idea it was historic. To be frank, we just didn't really know what all that entailed. So yeah, kind of that back part of the house, it was causing a lot of leaks and damage inside the house. And I mean, we knew it was historic, but we weren't sure exactly what that meant, just because we saw there was so much the T111 siding kind of all over the house. So yeah, we kind of started replacing that back side, and then kind of started to wrap around a little bit. And I think that's when we received the first stop order. And then for a while, we kind of just left it there. We weren't able to really, we're looking for that siding. We don't do a whole lot of remodels, so we weren't really even sure where to look for it, and like Home Depot or anything like that didn't have it. But as far as yeah, that second stop order, we had already met with Fred, and we kind of knew that we needed to put in that application. But we also knew we were going to have to remove that siding anyways. So unfortunately, what we did is try to be a little proactive and take off the siding we had put on and basically remove it. And that's when we got our second stop order. And then, yeah, I've been meeting with Fred. And then, I mean, as far as all the suggestions he gave us, if you guys are willing to accept it, we're willing to make those changes.
Wow.
Does anyone have any questions for the applicant?
So
I'm sorry.
it would be nice to know what changes Fred suggested and make sure that those are
Right,
right.
and that's kind of in his staff report, so we're all kind of aware of it. That sounds like a real positive move, Mr. Rodriguez. How do the other commissioners feel about the notion of mitigation, since we can't get it back perfectly, having a net positive in the end? I think that's a fantastic framework that Fred has put it in.
I agree.
I agree with that.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay. So I think at this point, I mean, it's pretty much in Mr. Rodriguez and Fred can get together, hammer out the details, but I think Fred has a good sense of where we want to be from his. This is the kind of report that I was looking for before. I didn't even notice some of those changes that you even brought up in this report about the window frames and such. It's good work.
So when we're talking about mitigation and replacement and all those, things that will hopefully make things better, Mr. Rodriguez, are you, like, for the transom window, planning on going to like architectural salvage and finding an actual window? Are you having one built to match the windows that have been replaced on it? Like, what are your thoughts on that? I'm just curious.
With that, well, that's something I wanted to reach out to you guys. I was hoping you guys kind of had a little better idea where we could find the stuff.
Yeah.
Because we've never done a historic remodel or anything, and I mean, a lot of the stuff, we've remodeled the home before, but I mean, all that stuff you find at Home Depot, stuff like that, where this stuff's a little more specialized, where we found out pretty quickly that it wasn't as easy to find even that siding or anything.
You need to actually have milled out. Yeah. Not easy.
I think another person to bring into the conversation, if we're suggesting finding rehab materials, because I've made the inquiry for a project of my own lately, and there are rules that the building official will need to chime in on. And whenever you get old glass, how much you can use. I don't know if that even it would be fit within code to use an old transom, even though that's what I would prefer. So I think at this point, it might be good for Mr. Rodriguez to have a kind of a huddle with Fred and Jeff and figure out where to go. Does anyone have any disagreement with that?
No, so we would just be putting this application on the back burner for the time being, right?
That's what I'm thinking. We would leave the hearing open, Fred?
Yep, that's right. You wanna, Karen, it needs to be open till a date and time certain. Is that correct? So, yeah, I mean, we could just plan on having this again on our next regularly scheduled meeting, and we can, in that time, just make sure that we're addressing all of these issues in a way that makes sense.
Does that suit you, Mr. Rodriguez?
Yes, it does, sir. Thank you.
Okay. We thank you for your time. And so do I need to enter anything to leave the meeting, the hearing open, or?
Yeah, somebody should make a motion to keep this public hearing open until July
4 p.m., July 21st.
4 p.m., July 21st, 2021.
Okay, I make a motion to keep this public hearing open until 4 o'clock on July 21st. Well, until that meeting, because you have to have it open for the meeting.
I'll second.
I'll second that.
Those in favor? Aye.
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 I don't hear any opposed, so no opposed. Okay.
Now, Fred, I have a question. And this maybe for Karen, maybe for Tom, I'm not sure, right? Because I'm probably one of the newer commission members on this commission. And after we closed one of our previous meetings with someone who does historic home rehab, I reached out and said, hey, can you send me your resources? And she said, sure. And she did. So then the other commissioners asked for if I could share that information with them, which I told them I would, but I don't have anybody's email address. And so what I'm curious about is if that information, as it was sent to me, like I had the information from a public meeting of the Historic Preservation Committee. So I reached out to the lady on my personal email, I don't have a city email, and said, hey, can you tell me? She did. So can I give those resources to Mr. Rodriguez as well if he's after them, because he's never done this before?
I suppose you could, but probably a better process would be to send it to Fred, and then Fred can forward it on.
I will do that.
Staff.
I'm not being in the middle of it.
Yeah, but this does bring up a topic that we can talk about maybe later, because one of the goals of the HPC is to not be in this enforcement mode all the time, but more in this education and assisting mode to help these projects move forward in a positive way. And maybe that's one of the things that we should talk about in the future, is adding, a way to provide some of these resources, online or some other manner where people can learn and learn from the experiences that we go through in order to be, that commission that's more assisting than coming along on the backside. And so I think that's a goal, and this is a good example of one way to potentially do that. So
All about teaching, so I'm good with that.
Cool. So there was a motion, and was that was approved then?
Voted on, yep.
It
All
was.
right. So perfect. So Luis, if you want to jump off the meeting, you definitely can at this point. I sure thank you for attending, and yeah, I'll reach out to you, and we'll keep on working on this.
Awesome. Well, thank you. I appreciate your guys' time.
Yep. Take care. See ya.
Bye.
Tom, do you want to swing back around now to what you want to discuss, or do you want to wait till we're done with some other stuff you probably don't want to hear?
Well, yeah, I do. Thank you, by the way. It's been a busy week, active week, and just to let everybody know, there's going to be a parade, a 4th of July parade. So, you're not hearing it here quite first, but close.
There's still going to be
a 4th of July parade. So.
Only in Independence, though, right? Not in Monmouth.
Nope. Well, it's going to be pretty much the original route and everything. So.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. So, I guess I just wanted to kind of come back to this trust issue, because, I think that, this in my mind is actually a much better example than maybe what has happened in the past to getting what we wanted, which is, this compliance and these people to come alongside. And the result, I think, of the conversation that we've had today and the work that Fred's going to do for it, and which will come back to you, is really going to get to be, to where you wanted to be, which is to have a structure that was, going in one direction, now actually coming back and being what hopefully what the HPC can live with. Obviously, we'd love it to be restored to its original condition, but at least if we can get to a net neutral or a little bit ahead, that's good. So I think that's what the goal of the HPC is to do, and the reason that we kind of go down these routes. And because from our perspective, and we've heard this over and over and over, and it's been our directive from council, and what we believe in is it's about compliance. It's about getting people to actually come alongside, and everybody's coming at this from a different perspective. You heard from this gentleman that they just didn't understand, and so, we can argue till we're blue in the face about how we get from point A to point B, or we can just, work together and, make sure that we're getting to point B, along the way. And I think that's what staff's goal is. And we have lots of different tools. That's one of the reasons that Sue Albee is here, is because, quite frankly, she's amazing at getting people to comply. HPC is tough. So a lot of the other stuff that she deals with is a lot harder to get compliance on. And so one of the things that we wanted to talk about was kind of a process, because, Curtis is right. The reality is on the HPC, some of these things happen really fast. And so that is a little bit different than some of the things that we deal with at some level, is because sometimes there's time. There's plenty of time, to get to someone to come in compliance. But if someone's going out and destroying a historic asset, things need to happen quickly. So that point isn't missed on us. And one of the things that we talked about outside of this meeting was, okay, well, how can we actually set up a structure such that we can respond to these different type of issues as they come up and deal with them? Because we're all learning here, and we're all, have a little bit of a new code, and I think we're all wanting to do the right thing. And so one of the things that we talked about was, who's kind of primarily doing what. Now, we talked about that a little bit earlier, but, Fred is really, the primary person who's going to be taking a look at the code and evaluating it and seeing, is this a contributing structure, or is this, what type of structure is this inside the HPC, and just do those interpretations. And then, if we need to do a stop work order or something else immediately because it's a quick situation, that's where Sue can come in and do stuff. So we'll probably come up with some templates on our stop work orders so that we can be more efficient in getting those, put together, especially if we see an event like this come up on the weekend. And we also, kind of come up with a process where, if we see something, then, how do we inform people? So what we typically do on enforcement type issues is, someone will call probably the non-emergency line with the police department. And from there, whoever takes that call, it could be the officer on duty, or if they're out on another call, it's going to be some sort of service that's actually doing it. So then they would route that information to the appropriate people, probably Fred and me. And then if we needed to get, Sue or somebody else involved, we would do that. So we're trying to figure out and learn from this to say, okay, well, this is how we did this. It wasn't perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but how can we be better? And from my perspective, we got the call, on February 20th, and that was a weekend.
You issued a stop work order within an hour.
Yeah, and so quickly
very quick.
We were able to get them to stop, and then in May, I think we kind of had a little bit different perspective on it, because as Fred went out there and talked to them, they were actually making the situation better by removing the siding. So they were getting closer to compliance rather than further away. But we still noted that we needed to do something in order to force them to actually get before the HPC, which is exactly what your role and job is to interpret, listen, and make decisions, based on this stuff. So I think there were a lot of learning opportunities here, and certainly some of the things that we've been talking about at the staff level is to try to get more of a formal process in place so that we're not, tripping over this. And we need to send a strong message, to people who think that they can do this as well, because quite frankly, if they're destroying a historic structure outside of our codes, that's okay. And we need to work with them to get to compliance, but at the same time, we need to make sure that people at least respect the codes and are willing to, at the very least, if they understand this historic structure, come in and ask the questions before they actually start doing work. So does that kind of make sense in a nutshell? I'm not sure if I covered everything there, but we definitely want to get some improved processes in place in order to learn from that.
I think you hit the nail right on the head, Tom. I was really impressed the day that this first happened in February, how quickly you acted. I got to say, I was amazed. And where the burr kind of rubbed under the saddle was when we were waiting for the application to come in front of us, and then work started again. And I know that Fred has had good intentions, but it could have gone sideways, allowing the work to continue as well. And that's where I think from the way the other commissioners reacted when we had our special meeting, they were kind of in the same frame of mind that once this first stop work order is submitted, we should have a plan before the property owner continues to work on it. That's pretty much where the distrust came on this particular action. Yeah, it wasn't, I've never distrusted anyone's motives. I think everybody at the table has had good motives. I just think that we need to have that, like you're saying, a procedure in place so we know this is what's going to happen. Boom, boom, boom. Not necessarily specifics as far as enforcement, but once a stop work order's been issued, we need to know what the next step is. There needs to be a next step.
Yeah, and I can let Fred and Sue step in here, but there was a lot going on, in May, when that happened. First off, we heard testimony tonight that they didn't come in, and they knew that they needed to come into the commission, and they just didn't do it. And so we were caught flat-footed as well as everybody else. Sorry about the dog barking in the background. But the reality is what we were doing on the back side of that was really working to make sure whatever we put forward in the next stop work order was absolutely bulletproof, so that if we did take this to the municipal court judge, that we could actually get fines put in place related to this. So, it may have seemed like there was nothing going on, and it may have seemed, that we weren't doing things, but there was a lot of work going on behind the scenes in order to make sure that what we issued them was legal and would stand up in court. And that took some code research, that took some work going on behind the scenes. And Fred had to make a determination that, okay, well, they're actually improving the situation here, not making it worse. So I'm going to take my time in order to make sure that what we're doing is enforceable and move forward. And you guys couldn't have known any of that I get that, but I think that's where the trust issue needs to come in. Is you need to know that we were actively working that and trying to do the best that we could to make sure that not only for this particular situation, but if this had been someone who was really intransigent through the whole thing, is that we could use this as an example to make sure that it didn't happen, in the future, because someone actually ended up getting before the municipal judge and he was able to actually issue fines. That's never our goal. That's never what we want to do. But at the same time, we run into some situations where that's just the only option. It's pretty rare, actually. Most people do come into compliance. And that's why Sue's really good at her job. So.
John, did you have a question?
No, I was gonna just agree with that earlier, and I recognize that Fred has done a disproportionate amount of work on this, probably compared to a lot of other applications, and so I want to say I appreciate that. And where we also went sideways, I wanted to say, Kurt, next time if we do something like that, just send an info copy to the rest of us, because it's. He was right. Somebody said earlier it was 3 people talking, and I didn't know that letter had gone out, and so I think it was a little bit in the dark also about what was going on there. That's all I was going to say there.
We probably should have done it where. Yeah, there's better ways to handle that. I probably did a misstep there, and I apologize for that.
Yeah, and if I could just make a suggestion. Probably, Curtis, what would have been best would have been send it to probably Fred, like you did, but then with a request to send this to the rest of the HPC, because the staff, we can send stuff, but you don't want to be sending stuff to HPC members.
I know that. I definitely don't do that. I should have done that. I was kind of in a rush. I could get into a lot of stuff that's big. It's like you. The whole last month has been, oh my God. I did have a week's vacation up at St. Vincent's Hospital last week.
That's not a vacation.
I would also say, there's always a potential too. We did know in advance that we're going to be talking about that, and so if you want the commission to ever consider a letter, you can bring the letter or you could give the letter to Karen or I, and we can put it in a packet, and then you can actually have the commission act on the letter, and that way for certain you're talking with one voice. That is always an option as well.
Okay, point taken. Does anybody want that letter, by the way?
Yeah. I'm so glad your chair.
John, because we can have Karen send that out to see if
no.
Okay.
No need at this point. It's water under the bridge.
Okay, fair enough.
I didn't have anything else unless there was stuff that you guys wanted to wrap back around. We do have Sue here and Sergeant Headland, who's boss. So if you have questions on, more of the actual enforcement piece, feel free to ask them. They're here to support you. So
the only question I had, Tom, and for Officer Albee and Sergeant Headland is, a lot of times these things happen on the weekend. So should the process, we should call the non-emergency number and you guys can move on that pretty quick?
Yes, often, like I said, there'll be a lot of times we only have one officer, so it might be a little bit of a delay in a response. But if they have
by quick, on the same day or two on the weekend.
If they have a question, they all have my phone number if it's something, and that'll be something Sergeant Headland can probably present as a method when
It seems like these types of things always happen on a weekend, a holiday, or after hours.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And to Sue's point, we're happy to help out and get the information to the people that need it. We definitely are not going to know the code and the historic preservation code like Fred's going to, or for that matter, like Sue's going to. I for sure do not. But I do think we are going to work on some other processes so we've got a better handle on kind of what we should do in those situations when they do come up, because undoubtedly it'll happen again. But we'll work on that on our end so you guys have a good idea.
Perfect.
Yeah, and we're trying to make it simple by just giving you one point of contact, and then we'll have a whole process inside of that to make sure that we have the people to respond to whatever comes up.
That's kind of what I was asking for last meeting, so I'm happy at this point. Beth, you look extremely happy.
I'm happy.
Jennifer, you're hard to read, and John, you're really hard to read.
Right.
Okay, so we want to move on to the preservation award.
Perfect. If you folks want to jump off for this, you can. Feel free. But thanks a lot for joining us, Sue and Sergeant Headland. Thanks, Tom. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, guys.
Thanks, guys. Good luck.
Fred,
Yes.
staff report.
Yeah, perfect. So, hey, we're trying to do a historic preservation award. I said I would reach out to the tattoo shop who I had heard painted a sign. I went in there, talked with that gentleman. He said, I'm kind of busy right now, but you might want to reach out to Gold Hands Signs out of McMinnville. They're also busy, but he has said that he's interested in this project. He quoted me a price of $250 per sign, and he mocked up what he's sort of thinking about. Let me share that with you. It is in your packet as well. Let me do this. Yeah, something like this. Can you guys see the draft?
Not yet on the screen, but we can see it in our packets.
Oh, didn't I share it?
Nope.
I don't even know where my Zoom call went.
Okay, we
Oh,
have
there
it in
it
the
is.
packet.
Yeah.
There it
Got it in
is.
the packet, so.
There it is.
Perfect. So anyways, this is sort of what he's thinking about. I guess I'm curious what your folks' thoughts are about how this turned out.
It's not. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
He has proposed to put this on framed glass, and I thought it was a really cool idea because then you could actually hang it in a window, which I thought was a neat idea. So it would be framed glass. It's one of those things where I actually feel like if we did have something like this is something to sort of incentivize historic preservation. It's one of those things when we were originally talking about this, we're like, oh, we want people to try and get this award, right? We don't want to just give out something to recognize it, but we'd like it to ultimately be desirable. From my perspective, I think that this sort of gets there, but I will defer to you folks for your thoughts.
So my initial question, like when I see this, and I didn't go driving past 230 South 4th Street, is that supposed to be 234 South 4th Street? Or is that just the same house that's going to be on every award that goes out?
That's 234th Street right there. And it's
So I think what Fred's saying, we can tailor the award for the property.
Yeah. And so for the other,
For your home, it's going to be your home on the award.
that's the idea. He has,
Cool.
he has the other property that we were talking about potentially awarding this to. I did send him a picture of that, and he's drawing out the same sort of schematic for that as well.
I mean, I think as long as it is the house that it's being awarded to, then I'm okay with it. I was like, I don't want to put that house, like if my house ever got the award, I was like, I don't want that house at my house. Doesn't look like my house. Doesn't even look like an old house to me. So I'm like, no. But if it's going to be the house that it belongs to on each
That would be cool.
individualized award, then yeah, that's fantastic.
Yeah, I agree. That's what jumped out at me was I thought that was a very generic looking house, you know?
Yeah, when you look at 234th Street though, it totally captures that.
Do we have a picture of the post renovation of that house?
I do somewhere. Let me see.
It does. It looks like the property.
Yes.
So
Just
it sounds like everybody's in agreement. If it's personalized for the property, this is a good idea.
It is.
Okay.
Yeah.
So now we just need to decide on which property should get it.
Hmm.
My understanding that the two houses were the one on C Street and then this home. Is that no longer the
Which was the one on C Street?
the porch renovation? 269C or whatever.
60.
Right. I remember
So
that. and
this is
it's funny because it's right around the corner from this. But
The-
this one's this was a lot more work versus the porch. Even
What
if the
was
porch
the-
really was well done.
What was the rating on this house, the classification of this house before the work? Was it non-contributing?
No, it's probably contributing. This is the one that you were talking about for the
Oh,
other
yeah.
one
Yeah.
with because before this was a different porch and they put in this and this whole roof line was different. So, this was very well done work. You'll remember their original application came in with like something like a shed roof back to here, and they removed that roof because it was a gable. They were looking for maybe not a shed, a hipped roof like this, and they came in here and they took off that gabled porch and they found the original roof line and then they recreated it. So it was based on evidence that they found doing the project was why you folks originally thought this would be a good one. Now, originally you guys were talking about two different classifications, sort of a major remodel and more of a minor remodel. Though we didn't specifically call out different awards like that. This to me seems like this really did meet that sort of lesser sort of, just technically well done, super well done sort of approach. And then this really felt like
Well, we don't have to give out one for maybe this year, since it's the first year. Maybe we should think about giving out like a major, like this basically saved that property that we've got pulled up on our screen now. But the other one is a textbook example of how to do restoration perfectly, but it's a much smaller scale and smaller project. Maybe this year we should award a minor and a major, and then going forward, just pick if something meets one of the, we don't have to give out 2 awards a year, but maybe considering giving out 2. And as Jennifer said the last time we were talking about this, it's kind of a year people need a little extra.
Yeah, true. Yeah, I like that idea.
Yeah, and I do think that this will be able to be funded at least half of it by the historic preservation grant, because this when we give this out, we want to make a big deal about giving these out, and so it will, we will have an opportunity to raise some awareness about historic preservation and independence.
Right, get it in the paper, get it in the MyNet newsletter.
Yep.
Maybe even get in both of those a link to the web page so people can see if their house is on, part of the district and things like that.
Yeah.
So can we get away with doing 2 this year?
Yeah, I think so.
What do you guys, everybody's in agreement on that then?
Yes.
Okay, do we want to give names
I have a
to?
question on,
Mhm.
I have
Go
a
ahead, John.
question on, weren't these both actually done in 2020?
Right, we can say projects completed and then we award the next year.
Like the Academy Awards, John. They don't give them out. This is the Academy
Okay.
Awards of Preservation.
Yeah, I was, okay. Got it.
And in COVID years, we get to do it midway through the following year. It's fine.
Yeah. So do we want to add another distinction of the award, like major restoration project or minor restoration, or just?
I wouldn't add it on that award. You can add it on a paper if you want to, but I don't want that getting too busy.
Yeah.
That's fine.
So just give out 2 awards this time, and then we'll go forward. We may only give 1, or we may still give 2.
Yeah, sounds good.
Fred, can you put this into motion?
Shoot, I would do something like I move to have staff continue to work with Gold Hand Signs on the preparation of these awards.
Oh, you want a motion from us?
I mean,
When I meant motion, I meant, can you get the ball rolling, or do you want a motion from us?
Oh yeah, no. I'll keep on going down this path, and yeah, I think we'll be good. I think we'll get there. I think it'll be good. It probably doesn't need a motion, but I mean, I guess I mean, when Curtis said, "Can you put this in
the motion?" You thought motion form. I meant,
yeah.
It was a poor choice of words.
Yeah. So, but no, I can definitely. I'll work with Gold Hand Signs to finish these up, and then we'll get. Yeah, we'll make this happen.
Nice. Thank you.
Oh my God, did we actually finish an agenda?
Good. Cool.
Okay, so does anyone else have any items that they wanted to bring up, questions?
I just need Fred's email address. Or Fred, you can email me and I'll send you that list of resources.
Okay, sounds good.
Thank you.
Fred, did you have any questions as far as since we didn't vote on anything, did you want to ask anybody if they had any particular axes to grind on what mitigation items they would like to see on that one property before you meet with Mr. Rodriguez?
Yeah, I mean, it sounded like they were fine with all of it, but
how does everybody feel about leaving the window on the side, the new horizontal, if we can get a transom window put in? Is everybody good with that?
Yeah.
A transom.
No, I think what you'd said earlier made a lot of sense, is that you cause more damage if you take it out.
Yeah,
No,
I mean, I've been thinking about that
Yeah.
horizontal window, and you do almost as much damage to the historic fabric of the structure repairing it as you do repairing it. It's catch-22 taking it back out.
Yeah,
And a good front door goes a long way.
it does.
And let's just remember too, that you did recess the public hearing, so you probably shouldn't want to make any more discussion about this right now.
Okay.
Okay.
Good deal.
I wanted to make sure Fred had all the tools, but yeah, I was so rushed to get through the meeting. I didn't think we'd have any extra time. Okay, thanks, Karen. Okay, no other questions? Meeting